Sally, the NMAA Board of Directors held an emergency meeting last week to discuss scholastic eligibility. What's changed?
Our coaches and athletic directors had been looking at their student athletes. And right now, about 70% of our student athletes at least have one F going into the 6 or the 9 weeks marking period. Back in June, our board of directors voted for a clean slate for our fall sports. And when they voted at that time, we were still looking at football and soccer. But right now in volleyball, golf, and cross country, we have those student athletes that at the 9 weeks, they need to have a 2.0 and no Fs. And so when they came to us, they're saying, these kids are struggling with remote learning. How can you help? And so our board of directors met, and we had different scenarios. We had 5 different scenarios, actually. The one that they voted on is that the student athletes will have a clean slate for the fall sports beginning in August, and then they were supposed to, again, like I said, 6 and 9 weeks do their grades, but they are going to be able to play those 3 sports from the beginning of the season to the end. Now, in December, when the first semester rolls, we will go back to what we normally do. 2.0, no Fs for semester grades. However, if they have one F, they can then use a cumulative provision, and if they have a 2.0, they are eligible. And that is what all the sports are going to follow from January to June is the first semester. So although we are struggling right now with remote learning, our student athletes need to know that they are going to have the grades at semester. So whatever happened in August and September as they are getting used to remote learning and this new way of education, they need to buckle down and have their grades because the semester grades are going to be very, very important for all the sports.
What about scholastic eligibility for student athletes in the second semester? How does this new ruling affect them?
And like I said in the last question, and I want to reiterate, that our student athletes, they need to make sure at semester, we have 2 months left probably to the end of the semester. We need to make sure that their semester grades are a 2.0 and no Fs. Now, if they do have one F, then they can use the cumulative provision, and if their cum from the freshman year to wherever they are at is a 2.0, then they would be eligible. The semester grades are going to be key, JP, because that's going to be, if they're eligible in December, they can go from January to June and play sports without looking again at scholastic eligibility. Now, if they're ineligible in December, they can gain their eligibility back by the 4th 6 weeks or the 3rd 9 weeks. And if they have a 2.0 with no Fs, so those 2 marking periods, they'll be able to get that eligibility back. So once again, even though those fall sports have a clean slate from the beginning to through their season, all the other sports, December, they need to make sure they have a 2.0 and no Fs.
So the board voted on scholastic eligibility for fall sports, but can a school still use the 6 or 9 week grading mark if they choose to instead of that clean slate?
There is a bylaw in place that will remain in place where schools can have stricter rules and regulations in the NMAA. So in this case, when the board of directors voted for the clean slate for our fall sports, a school district can opt to use the 9 weeks grades, 2.0 and no Fs. Also at semester, a school may decide instead of a 2.0 that they're going to have a 2.5. And so it is different, so make sure parents and student athletes that you check with your administration as to the rules and regulations for scholastic eligibility.
What about schools that have chosen to not participate in sports? Are students allowed to play for another school?
Our bylaws in place at this moment is that kids, the student athletes, are able to participate in the sports within their school. Now with COVID-19, we are having some really smaller schools, A and AA's, that are opting out of fall sports. And so those student athletes, because of our bylaws that are in place, will not be able to play that sport at a different school.
Lastly, today is October 5th, and at the time of this recording, the governor has not changed any health orders. So what does that mean for fall sports, cross country, golf, and volleyball that are scheduled to start practice today? And when do you anticipate games starting?
We're waiting on the governor's response. The calendar has been sent up since June. However, I do know that they can't make decisions that far out. They need to look to see where the cases are currently. So I do understand that it's taking time to make that determination. We did send up our guidelines for cross-country meets. We sent up our guidelines for volleyball. And we're just waiting on a response to get the go that, yes, you can start and you can compete. Right now, our calendar has us, like you said, starting today, and they're supposed to compete on Saturday. But we are right now in a holding power. So what we're going to do is, I talked to the volleyball coaches, the cross-country, and what we're doing is we are going to practice still in our 9-to-1 pods, no scrimmaging, limited amount of equipment, and mask wearing. Just as the governor has ordered for the past 2 months, we're going to do the same thing today, and hoping that we will get a response on the fall sports here shortly. Our athletic directors, as we met on Friday, we're ready to move the calendar any way that we need to do, but our hope is that these are low-risk sports. And I know some people say, well, volleyball is not low risk. The guidelines that we have sent up to the governor's office have really made volleyball low risk, with a lot of sanitation and mask wearing during play. And so we're hoping that these 3 sports are going to get approval from the governor. But until then, we're going to practice. And as I told our coaches, we have to stay positive, because any time that they're in contact with these kids, we need to look at the emotional well-being of our students. And so if we're given the go-ahead, we will be so happy. And if we're not, the amount of time that they're able to spend with their students this week in quote-unquote practice, and this very restrictive practice, will still make gains. And it will make gains mostly in the mental well-being. And so here we are, JP. It is Monday, October 5th. This is the date that I have been looking forward to. I'm looking forward to October 10th for the first day of any type of competition. But we will make adjustments pending on what the governor's orders are. We will respect the decision, and we will move forward. But right now, these kids need to play. And as we have been saying from the day one, my goal has not changed. In the 2021 school year, we will have all sports in New Mexico. And whether it's now, whether it's after January, but we're hoping it's now. We're hoping we'll get a favorable yes from the governor's office, and we will play again in New Mexico.